Play Cases is episode 6 now, and this is going to be our part 2 follow up for the part 1 we did last week. Last week we covered garage kits, kind of an intro to what the heck are they, how do you buy them, what are these all events like, how does the licensing work, stuff like that. This week we are going into a bit more detail, and yeah, so let's get started on that. Before we do, for those of you who don't know, I am Chris. My host is Science. Say hello, sir.
Hello. Hello again, everybody. I am
And
here.
then we have our 2 special guests from last week, Muntoe and Toshki.
Hello,
Say
everyone.
hello.
Hello.
These are our
How you guys going?
garage kit community experts. They gave us a ton of good knowledge last week. If you did not catch that episode live, we do have that up on YouTube. The link is posted in the server updates channel. So if you want to go back and hear them tell us about just kind of the intro to garage kits, that's a great video to watch. But today, we are going to be talking about the actual nitty gritty of getting kits together. Basically, we're walking into this as if I just bought my first kit and I have
The
no
nitty-gritty.
idea what to do.
And before we get started, Chris, I just want to clarify, it wasn't last week, it was last month.
Last month, God, my brain.
Oh,
All right,
trust me, I understand.
All right, well, clearly I'm not together today, so Science, you take it from here. I'm going to go get some
Oh, no.
dinner.
Well, do you want to come take over my computer so you can get all the images set up?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay. There you go.
All right. All right.
Take it away, guys.
So, Mun and Tosh, why don't you kick us off? I just got my first kit. I have no idea what to do with it. Where am I going from here? What? Hold my hand. Explain like I'm 5.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, a newbie.
Where do we even start?
Like, what do I need? I have a kit.
Well, you
Now
have
what?
the kit in your hands, right?
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
what you're referring to? All right.
Yeah,
Well, there's
last week you helped us all learn what they are and how to buy them.
Last month.
But now I have it here. Last month, the last episode. Yeah, so now that we have our kits, what now?
Well, I think the
Uh,
easiest way to think about it is to split it up into kind of 2 or 3 sections where the majority of what you'll be doing is preparing your kit. So there'll be several tools that you'll need in order to prepare that. And then there's painting and then assembly. So, each of those has many different items that you'll need to buy within it. I
Okay.
can talk about it, or Tosh, if you want to talk a little bit about it, I can do either.
I guess we could start with laying all the pieces out to check that all the pieces are there.
Yes, that is an excellent first point. So typically, kind of what we do when we receive a kit is we want to make sure that we have all of the pieces available. So sometimes, sculptors occasionally forget a piece or they include a piece that is incorrect. So if you're purchasing a kit, what we do is we open the box and take everything out. And what I do is lay all the pieces out and kind of cross check them against the checklist. So a lot of kits, like this one here, this Abby figure will include a parts sheet. And so what you'll do is you'll lay the pieces out and you'll make sure that all the pieces are there. And if they aren't there, it kind of depends, right, on your whether you purchase directly from a sculptor or not. So if you purchase from a sculptor, then typically what you'll do is reach out to a sculptor and say, hey, this piece didn't come with my kit. If you bought the kit secondhand, it's a little bit different. Tosh, maybe you have experience with that.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to still have the pieces given back to me. You could also, if it's 3D printed, 3D sculpted, get the sculptor to send you a piece if you've got access to a resin printer.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of kits now are, some of them when you receive them, they're printed with 3D resin. So, sculptors in some cases will just give you access to that particular file to be able to print it yourself.
Oh, that's
If
pretty
you're
good.
Yeah, if you're buying a kit secondhand,
Can get
sometimes
messy, yeah.
yeah, it can get really messy. Sometimes you're essentially out of luck. Uh, some people try resculpting the piece themselves. Some people try reaching out to the sculptor, even though, it may be a really old kit, to see if there's anything that can be done. Some sculptors do keep their molds that they cast the kits in, but sometimes you're just really out of luck. This is a beautiful photo of what kits can look like when you receive them.
Yeah.
So, as we discussed kind of in our past session, kit quality can really vary, and it can be super high quality coming from a really great workshop, or it can be just completely cast by the sculptor. So this photo here is a kit that I built, and these pieces were right out of the box after I laid them out. I guess it was a bag in this case. And all of that like junky looking resin at the bottom. This is meant to be two different hair pieces, like pieces of hair, which I don't know if it looks like that in this photo, but
Huh.
there's a lot of really junky resin. It's called casting tabs at the bottom. All of that kind of is just attached to the kit. So the purpose also of laying all these pieces out is just to kind of assess the kit's condition and potentially like how much work is involved that you're about to be doing. So in this case, this figure has a lot of work involved in cleaning up the hair pieces. There was a lot of those, like you can see those horizontal kind of bars. That's all just casting material. So a lot of this stuff just ended up being cleaned up and thrown away.
Now, how do I clean that stuff up? Like, what kind of tools would I need for that?
Well, the first thing that yeah,
oh.
go ahead, Tosh. That's okay.
Okay, yep. So first thing I'd start with would be the nippers, similar to the ones you'd use for a Gundam, but usually a lot cheaper. Let's see. Got a couple of notes up just because I wasn't ready last time. And then sandpaper to smooth out the bumps and lumps. I tend to just go to the hardware store for mine. The nippers can also be bought from a hardware store. Yeah.
Yeah, and I literally just use a pair of pliers. Like I just have, not pliers, it's like just like wire cutters in some cases for the
Yeah.
really intense stuff. So yeah, like this photo here, this is your photo, right, Tosh? It's like of pushes
Yeah.
and nippers. Yeah. So having a small pair of nippers like that is really handy for some smaller stuff. But sometimes like that photo I just showed, it's like big chunks of resin, and so in that case I just take the wire cutters and chop the hell out of it.
It's really cathartic.
Yeah, it's good. Like when you have a lot of that extra casting material, it's satisfying to see it all kind of get thrown away because there's like a lot of junk. I know. Did we mention God Hand, Tosh? I don't think we mentioned.
Oh
that.
yes. You don't want to go for your really expensive Godhead ones. They're made for really small gates on Gundams. They can break.
Yeah, so God Hand is a brand of hobby tools made in Japan that a lot of the supplies are interchangeable with garage kits, but in this case, the nippers are not recommended for kits just because the resin is a harder, well, it's a softer material, but the nippers are really delicate, so they're really only meant for like model runners and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And
Now, I've
Yeah.
seen some of these that are like a blade on each side, and then some that are flat on one side and a blade on the other, cutting versus pinching. What does that matter?
I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I actually have no idea what you're talking about. Is that a Gundam supply?
I guess so. Yeah. So like the wire cutters, those are blades on both sides. The lower end God hands are also like that. The higher end nippers, like the SP 10 whatevers for the God hands, the
Yeah,
expensive ones.
120s.
Yeah, they're flat on one side and a blade on the other, so it does not pinch. It
Oh,
cuts.
interesting.
Yeah. If you're doing it on a gate, on like a model kit, on a runner or whatever, the pinching with certain types of plastic can actually leave like stress markers and discolor the plastic where it's getting pinched. Whereas the cutting on the flat end usually gives you a cleaner cut and will help you avoid some of that discoloration on that stuff. So I wasn't
that's
sure
why
if
they're made
that.
like that.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of the difference on that. It probably doesn't matter on the material that you work with in a lot of the garage kits, but
Yeah.
in things like Gunpla and miniatures and models, I do think that probably comes more into play. So
And
Yeah,
then
that's interesting.
to also point out there, Chris, to your point, is resin is more brittle overall than a plastic for a plastic model kit. So when you're talking about the way some of these tools are designed for like plastic model kits and to not use them on resin, it can actually shatter the resin as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't have access to the expensive nippers, so I've not noticed this before. That's awesome.
yeah, I keep different pairs for different tasks. Because, like y'all said, the more expensive God hands, they are fragile, and if you try using that to cut like the bigger part of sprues on kits and stuff like that, they can and will break on you. So you want kind
Good
of
to
more of
know.
a workhorse nipper and then a detailed nipper, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of cutting, do you ever use like any sort of like hobby knives or edges or anything like that, or you?
I like a design knife. Back on the image Science was showing before with the magic circle background, mine's a nice ergonomic tip, handled one. You can get any sort of design knife though. Cheap blades are cheap. I tend to get mine from the hobby store. It's cheaper than the $2 store for some reason.
I use a variety, so I just use plain old X-Acto knife for a lot of work, and X-Acto knives have several different tip handles you can buy, I guess. So I really just kind of go with like the triangle pointy shaped one. But there
Yeah.
are also ceramic cutting blades that are designed for hobby use that I've been using a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
Just because I've had several instances where I've kind of slipped and ended up cutting my hand, and the
Ooh.
ceramic blades don't have that happen to you. So it's designed in a way that's a little bit safer for handling. So because of that, I've been using those ones a little bit more. But honestly, the sharper tip X-Acto knife, you can get some really clean, precise cuts with that. So as we're going to probably discuss, there are a ton of different tools in this hobby that can give you really tiny little differences, and it's kind of up to the individual to find out what works best for them.
Yeah. You don't need to buy everything under the sun when you're first starting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Cough,
if
science.
if you guys were to say for somebody just getting started, what tools would you first recommend? Right, just
do we wanna
like
go through,
a
like, a
base
checklist,
checklist. Yeah,
or-
like a base checklist for somebody to get started. What would you say they would need right off the bat if they bought a kit and they wanted to start prepping it and maybe do a little painting on it and get their hands wet?
Do you
I think
want
we're
to crack
jumping
at it,
really
Tosh,
far
otherwise
ahead
I
if
can
you're already
just
getting into
list.
paints.
Well, I'm just saying, just the checklist
I-
side of things. You know, like a parts list of like what somebody would want to buy.
So the image shown is actually sort of my starter set that I was thinking about last night. Additionally, so we've got some tweezers used for masking, the nippers as we discussed, knife as we discussed, some sandpaper down the bottom. What else? A pin vise is a little drill bit used for drilling holes and stuff. It's like a manual drill. You can get Dremels, but the the pin vise is probably a little bit easier. Otherwise, sorry, that might be it for prep. Mun, did I forget anything?
Did we mention sandpaper? So I typically buy
Yes.
sandpaper in several different grits, and grit refers to kind of the roughness of the paper. So if you're getting one that feels really rough, that typically means it has a lower grit as opposed to something with a higher grit, which feels a little bit smoother. So a lot of us tend to start around 400 to
Yep.
600, 800 grit, which is, I guess, general basis, like removing, seam lines, other types of things on resin. And as the grit increases, you're more polishing the kit. So when you get into 800, 1200, 1500, 2000, those grits are getting really, really fine, and you're able to do a little bit more detail work. So,
Makes it shiny.
yeah, it makes it nice and shiny. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit more as we dig into things. Let's see. So you had sandpaper, pin vise, um, hobby
Nippers,
knife slash
knife.
X-Acto knife. Cleaning solution is a big one.
Oh,
So
yes.
what happens in this hobby that's unique from model kits is that a lot of times kits are cast in a traditional silicone mold, excuse me, and because of that, prior to injecting the liquid resin, this kind of slimy film is put inside of the silicone mold, and we call that mold release. And so when the resin dries up and the kit gets hard and you extract the kit, it leaves this kind of like slimy film on top of it. And sometimes it's not very visible, but in almost all cases, what we do is we clean a resin kit. So this photo here is a kit essentially being put into what's called simple green, which is a cleaning solution, but any sort of degreaser will work. And you just let the kit sit for a couple hours. I let my kits sit overnight, and then you wash them with water and a toothbrush or some sort of soft bristle material afterward. And yeah, it just cleans all the stuff off. The purpose of this is to essentially allow primer and paint to stick a little better on the kit and to remove any other, dirt and dust and all that type of stuff. So it people do this at a different point. Some people do all
Mm.
their pinning and all their sanding and stuff first, and then they clean the kit. I tend to clean my kit after I've done sanding. So, some of these steps are interchangeable as well. And
Yeah,
then
I'm the same. I tend to use a dishwashing liquid for myself, bit of warm water, just simply like I'm washing the dishes. I'll get a little toothbrush, go scratchy scratchy on the little pieces.
one
There's
other
a
thing.
question from the chat for our
Oh,
hosts.
Oh,
sure.
If someone has a, let's say, 1/7 scale size kit, how long would it take on average to do the cleaning up and then painting for an experienced user?
it can depend widely.
Yes. Yeah, it will very much depend on how complex the kit is, the number of parts per the kit, how detailed the painting is, how many colors are needed. Um, if it's something super elaborate, average complexity, okay. A lot of people I would say probably, well, I mean it really varies, right, Tosh? Like it's hard to throw out
Mm.
an exact number. I
Let,
would say
let's
somewhere
let's
oh,
back it up a little bit, and let's say
okay.
a pretty standard simple kit, right? With like let's
Maybe
say like
something from Grizzly Panda.
yeah, something with like maybe 20 or 30 parts.
Yeah, average complexity.
Right.
Let me see. I've never actually recorded the hours it takes for myself.
Personally, I can take anywhere between 40 to 80 hours to build a kit, depending on how complex it is, number of parts, scale, etc. And again, yeah, it really depends. Yeah, I mean, some people can build very quickly. They can literally build and paint in 2 days, and other people, like myself, just spend a lot of time in the prep stage to make
Mm.
sure that things are super smooth and ready to go. And it will also really just depend on the quality of the kit that you get, right? So if you receive a kit that's in great condition and doesn't require a lot of sanding and pinning and puttying and fixing things that are wrong with it, that's going to cut down on the time a lot.
Yeah. So I guess the real answer to the question is there's a lot of variables that go into it, right? Um,
Yes.
Yeah.
if you get a great cast kit, the time's going to be a lot less. If you have to do a lot of repair work and prep work, it's going to be a lot more time. But that's also why, like,
Yes.
for some people who are here that may be considering like commissioning a kit, that's why they're expensive, and
Mm.
that's something to understand as well.
Now, you mentioned sandpaper earlier. I've seen some people use like sanding sticks or even like actual metal files. Does that have any place in this, or do you strictly stick to the actual sandpaper?
I use sanding sticks. I recommend the sandpaper for beginners just because it's a lot cheaper. I like the Wave Hobby Files and the God Hand sanding sponges myself. I find the foam makes it easier to keep the surface rounded. Yeah.
I honestly just use sandpaper. I do have some like kind of foam spongy sanding things, but I work on a lot of really tiny kits, and so having the ability to work with tiny pieces of sandpaper and fold them up and cut them into little precise shapes, that's typically what I stick with. And I will note that for sandpaper, and I guess sanding sticks and all of these, there are store brand ones and then hobby brand ones as well. So
Yeah.
really kind of up to you. And that goes the same for a lot of these hobby tools. And I'm kind
Yeah.
of going back here just for a minute, but since the cleaning photo is up, I just remembered that for 3D printed kits, the
Oh,
cleaning
yeah.
is generally not needed. So it is advised not to immerse your kit in liquid overnight for a 3D print, just because that's not how this resin works. And these kits are not, you don't need to do that at all. In fact, it could destroy your kit, and I have personal
Yeah.
experience with
Oh,
that. So,
good to know.
yeah. One of those like things that you learn.
All right, so kind of going back to our steps, we've unbagged or unboxed our kit. All the parts are there, and we've cleaned up the mold lines. We've actually soaked them in cleaning solution, given a little scrub. Um, Now, what are we checking for? Is there anything else we need to look at for like defects or anything? Or
This one, this image is a image of the bubbles you can get in some casts. Just noting it while it was popping up.
Oh, yes. I have
Well,
a
I
couple of
figured
these
if
too.
we're still on prep work, this is probably a good image to go over as to what's going on here.
Right. Tosh,
Did you
maybe
want to
you
handle
can
this one?
explain. Oh, I mean, I could do it too. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So this is a photo of an armpit. Looks like Sailor Moon. And
Sailor V.
Oh, Sailor V. Okay, my favorite. So essentially, what is happening here is we have this kind of yellow beige colored resin, and the gray stuff is primer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tosh, if it's putty.
Putty.
Oh, putty. Okay, so this is a gray putty that has been applied to the kit, and all of the gray areas here that are filled in indicate areas that there were holes or misalignments in the resin. And so you can kind of see all those like tiny gray dots moving up along the arm. Those are called air bubbles. And what happens is occasionally air can get trapped in the liquid resin when this mold is getting cast. And then once the cast hardens, the bubbles are kind of left in the resin and they blow up to the surface. And so you end up with what I call a Swiss cheese kit. So it ends up being
Yes.
Swiss cheese. So our job as model kit builders is to fill in all of these holes and make the kit totally smooth, or as smooth as possible, prior to painting. Otherwise, when you paint the kit and prime it, you're going to be left with all of these bubbles. So um, what Tosh has done here is fill in putty into these areas to make this kit as smooth as possible. And I see a question in the chat about, are bubbles an issue for printed kits? I'm assuming 3D.
Yeah.
No, because the way that 3D printed kits are printed is essentially different from the liquid resin that's being cast. And so 3D printed kits are built on a support, and more of an issue is just kind of filling in and sanding off all of the print lines and the print, supports. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in chat.
No,
Yeah, it's kind of like
I was going to say you are correct, Mon, on that one. The way 3D printing works is they're built layer by layer, so you don't have that time for the resin to settle and air bubbles to get trapped. So it's curing as the model is being created. So air bubbles are not really an issue there. You might still get it sometimes in like a clear resin print, I believe, but I think for standard
I
resin
haven't
prints,
experienced that, but yeah.
yeah, for standard resin,
It's pretty
it's not
rare.
as much of an issue. And sorry to interrupt you there, Tosh. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the 3D
Yeah.
printed kit difference is, I mean, there are similarities, but the differences are in how the kits are cast. And, essentially I saw a little something about, it kit being hollow or not if it's 3D printed. That is different from 3D resin, or from, sorry, excuse me, traditionally cast resin as well.
Yeah, it can make it a little bit harder to assemble. You can't add pins. Pins are little pieces of wire that you can drill into the kit to help stabilize it. Yeah, I've not experienced a hollow. Oh wait, no, I have recently. I've experienced a hollow kit. I didn't need to add any pins though because they had lots of pegs. The pegs being little keys that connect the pieces together.
Yeah, I've also had experience with hollow kits, and what I have done is just filled in the area and installed my own pin. So for
Yep.
beginners, I generally would not recommend working with a hollow 3D kit, just because you don't have that foundation and skill set and knowledge of how to do that, but it certainly won't stop you. Yeah.
So you both have mentioned pinning. What is that? What does that mean? What does that process look like?
I can take this one.
Okay.
All right, so pinning is little bits of wire that you drill into the resin to make it stable. I tend to use brass or aluminium wire. What else?
I tend to think of it as building the skeleton in your kit.
Yeah.
So without having these supports inside of the kit, your kits are more prone to breakages, and essentially it helps let the parts fit a little bit better. When we call pinning, it's just the process of drilling holes into the resin pieces and then installing the wire, or occasionally, depending on what you want to do, magnets, um, in order to get these kit pieces to stick together.
Now,
So
how
this
do you
photo,
line that up? Like if I'm attaching an arm to a torso and I'm going to put a piece of wire or whatever between the two, you're going to drill holes to insert that wire. Like, how do you make sure that you're drilling in the right spot on both ends for when it's going to line up? So you're like, oh God, I'm a little bit off on this one. And now the arm is crooked. And now I have a hole in it that I drilled.
So some kits are lucky enough to come with pre-aligned holes, and if it's really nicely cast, essentially you just drill into the hole that the sculptor sent, um, and then you just stick the two pieces of, magnets or wire or whatever together. In the case of this photo, what we have here is the back of a face and the front part of, I guess, the hair. And so there's a hole drilled into the face on the left, and this is intended for a magnet. So what happens is you drill your hole for the magnet, and then you will take a piece of, like, this is literally, I think, sticky tack or just like putty. And what I like to do is I put it on the other side of the piece and just press the pieces together, and that way you know exactly where you need to drill. And so I just basically drill as close to the center of that other hole with the putty as possible, and then, expand the hole as needed. That way your pins will align probably as close as possible. There can still be cases where they might slightly misalign if you get at the wrong angle or something. But the reason why we use brass wire and not a harder type of metal is because those are more softer and you can kind of bend the rods to fit the kit.
Ah,
Anything else,
that's
Tosh, you want
that
to
makes
add?
sense.
I've also used paint markers to help mark where the dots are.
Oh, good idea.
It's basically just making sure the two pieces stick, like touch.
Yep.
So the marker will appear on both.
Perfect.
Yeah, either work. Yep.
The Maddie in the chat asks about 3D printed kits. Is it better to print them not hollow or better to print them hollow? We sort of did cover that. Basically,
Yeah, a little bit.
the advice was avoid hollow if you can, because being able to actually do stuff like pinning is going to be really difficult if the parts you're trying to pin are hollow outside of that external layer.
Yeah, I could chime in here a little bit too on this one. It really depends if the kit is keyed or not. If the kit is keyed,
Yes.
you can probably get away with printing it hollow because you have the keys to align everything. If it is not, then having some sort of infill, at least at the joints, would be very beneficial, so that way you can pin it.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've got our parts. We cleaned them. We've trimmed off all the extra nonsense. We learned how to pin. We've dry fitted stuff together. What's next? When do we get to paint?
Have we spoken about filler yet?
Well, we
You
talked.
showed us the picture with the holes being patched up by the gray putty and stuff. Is there more we want to add on to that?
Another type of putty that's used is super glue. It's very, very common in the Japanese space. They use a product called Cyanon. We can get something similar called Starbond DW500. It's basically a white glue that matches the color of the resin.
I don't know if
Yeah.
this photo is appropriate. Mun, you can maybe chime in here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, my beloved Bondo. So we've been discussing different types of putties and ways to fill in kits, and as Tasha mentioned, cyanacrylic glue is very popular. This photo, which looks like a horror movie scene, is using a putty called Bondo. It's a 3M putty, which is actually meant for automotive purposes in terms of filling small car dents. And a lot of us use this putty to fill really, really tiny bubbles and other imperfections. So what's going on here is I've put on putty basically all over this kit because she had just dozens and dozens and dozens of little tiny holes that were not very easy to fill. And so you lather it on, you sand it all off, it fills in the holes, you refill as necessary. You can use other types of putty alongside Bondo or whatever putty you're using. So, in terms of other types of putties, UV resin is very popular to
Yes.
fill in kits. It's similar to like nail UV resin or other things. Yeah, here's another photo, which you can kind of see all of those holes at the bottom. Those are all tiny pinholes. Um,
Wow.
And how can you tell when you're done puttying and sanding?
well, that kind of gets into the next step. So I'm
Okay,
gonna just talk about one more type
sure.
of thing that people have been using, which I literally just tested today, and I was kind of pleased with. This is more of a recent development, but some people have been using a white wax crayon, like a Crayola
Yes.
crayon, to fill in tiny bubbles, and I can attest that this does work. I don't know how deep you can fill the holes, but I just tried it, and I was really pleased. It smoothed everything out really nicely. So um, we'll talk about
Yeah.
priming in just a minute, but that's another method that you can use.
Yeah, another putty I
Oh
like
boy.
is Surfacer. Comes from Mr. Color. It's a lacquer-based paint that you can literally just slap onto the kit and it'll fill the holes in as well. You can also thin it with thinner. Tamiya putty's another one, which is it's kind of the same as the Surfacer but thicker, and you can also thin it with the lacquer thinner as well.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these can be thinned with lacquer thinner, which, be aware that there are some toxic risks to that. Um,
Yes.
this photo here is during the prep process, and so there's multiple types of putty being used. You can kind of see that yellow putty that's used to kind of put pieces together. There's the red putty. There's an arrow here indicating where I need to putty in order to fill in a gap that's still present in the hairpiece. So putty can be used for multiple purposes, whether it's surface level preparation or repairing areas, adding new pieces to a sculpt. It's kind of a multi-part process, and there are so many products that can be used. Light curing putty, Tamiya light curing putty is one of my go-tos. Essentially, you just stick it up to a light and it will cure in like 30 seconds. So I see a lot of questions in the chat. I'm not sure which ones we want to take first.
Yeah, Magic
Oh,
Star
yeah.
asks, I understand the purpose of the putty is to fill in the holes. What would happen if you didn't use putty? Like if you continue to assemble that kit while leaving the holes as is, what could happen to the figure if you didn't?
The surface of the kit will look kind of Swiss cheesy.
Yeah, it will just look like
With
it's full of holes, right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
won't be smooth like most figures are.
you might have some
Yeah.
issues with paint. Kind of the paint look
Yes.
of paint, it might look kind of warped or bubbled up in certain areas just because the paint isn't applying evenly over the surface. It's a step that you can skip if you really are wanting to, but a lot of us, the end goal here is to obtain a kit that's as smooth as possible and looks pretty close to PVC. So
Yeah.
for that reason, all of this prep work is necessary.
And then we had another question that's a little bit more off topic currently, but I think it's probably a good idea to just address it now. When it comes to kits in general, are they more prominent in like obscure animes and visual novels and manga, or are they more just an all around, you could find what you
Uh,
want or something like that?
I'd say more all around. It's depending on what the sculptor personally likes, because these are all a hobby based thing. Even the sculptors are doing this as a hobby.
I
And we
agree.
covered a lot of this in last month's,
Yeah.
We
not
did,
weeks. I got
but
it
it's
right
good
this
to do a
time.
little recap.
Oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I'm saying if you want a deeper dive on it, we got a lot of really nice insight as far as like why sculptors are making it and what they're making and how they get to do the licensing for these different characters. Like that was super fascinating to me personally, learning kind of how that whole process worked. So if you're interested in a deeper dive on that, definitely check the last episode because it was really informative. IMO.
Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. We have another question in the chat from Prism about painting, but I think we should hold off on that until we get to the painting side of things. So we will answer that coming
Yeah.
up. Um, but yeah,
Coming out
we'll,
now, I guess.
Yeah, I think
if
so. Yeah.
that's, are we at that point, or do we want to talk about actually putting the kit together after you've pinned it to make sure
Yeah,
everything
test
fits right?
fitting, I
Yep.
guess. Yep. Sorry, Mun.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So this step will vary when you choose to do what we call a dry fit or test fitting your kit. But essentially, what you're going to be doing is after you've pinned your kit together, you want to make sure that all the pieces fit together well, right? So this photo here is a 3D printed kit, but it's what we call test fitted. So everything has been magnetized and or pinned. I think in this case, I only used magnets. And this is what we call a really good fit, just because the kit basically looks like it's almost ready for priming or I guess more puttying. In some cases, what happens is when you test fit your kit, you may notice a gap in between two pieces, or maybe your pin was misaligned. And so this really serves as a point to correct that prior to moving forward and painting your kit. Because the last thing you want to happen is you've painted your kit, you're ready to assemble, and then nothing fits correctly or there's gaps. So these are all photos of, at least so far, of my kits that I have test fitted, and this is a great point to be like take photos if you're into social media and wanting to show your progress. It's really kind of like a key. Okay, this is what the figure looks like. This is where we need to go next. So this kit is just kind of sitting on a candle. She's actually wasn't meant to be sitting on anything, but you can see most of the pieces fit together pretty well in this case. There's not really any gaps that I see that are evident, and if I'm remembering correctly, I did not need to do any extra puttying for gaps on this kit. And when we say puttying gaps, that means using one of the putties. Actually, I don't think we discussed any of the putties that we talked about that actually do the gap filling.
Oh, yes. This
But
is a perfect image, actually.
mhm.
So this is Saber. Her bottom piece of dress that came in two pieces. I'd gone and glued that together with some basic super glue, then went in with some epoxy sculpt or milliput or Tamiya putty. It's a two-part putty that you can use to fill bigger gaps like that. The pieces in this case were like the gap was quite big. So I'd gone in with the big putty first, and then some thinner stuff to fill in the rest of the little gaps that were left after the initial pass.
So sometimes what we do is, like Tosh said, when we have two larger pieces or two pieces like hair that are meant to fit together, we basically glue them together and then we fill the gap early on. So when you end up priming and painting the kit, it just looks like one solid piece. So after all of this putty is sanded down off of the saber, when Tosh is painting it, it will just look like one piece. That's the purpose of it. And you can do this before you prime and paint. And sometimes you have to do it after. So it can be a little bit precarious or scary once you've painted a face and you want to like assemble two pieces of hair together. You basically have to
Yes.
go in, sand down that gap, like putty it, sand down all the paint, repaint, and then kind of repeat the process until you don't see the gap anymore. And I have a couple photo science of what it looks like in progress. I think it's like 3 different photos. I don't know if we want to go to that one.
Cool. If you could point
It
me
would
to
be
where they are. Is that
it would be
puttied
in
kits?
putty kits, Satoko putty 1, and then 2, 3.
Perfect.
Now I thought Saber was from Fate, not One Piece.
Okay, so we're going to go through 3 photos that kind of show what this process looks like. You can see this is a photo of Satoko from Higurashi, and there's 2 pieces here behind the headband, and there's kind of like this L-shape gap. And let's go to the next photo if you can. So you can see there's a kind of a gap there, just like the division of 2 pieces. So what we do is we use the milliput or the epoxy sculpt to fill in and sand down that area. So what it ends up doing, like it ends up looking like one piece. And you can kind of see that there. You can see the putty. But let's go to the next picture. So the goal here, this is primer, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. But this looks like one piece in the back, right? You don't see that kind of L shape at all. And this is a really great thing you can do to make your kit look a little bit more professional and just take some time to address pieces that are meant to be like one solid hair piece or, part of one skirt, all sorts of things like that. Thank you for showing those.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you just need to point me to which folder because you gave me so many photos.
Yeah, I want to
It's
be
all
prepared.
good. I think you
That's
can.
great.
Maybe this one will help as well. Whoops.
Oh yes, yeah, we can go through this process again. So this is another
Ooh.
kit that needed a lot of work, but you can see, I think it was like 2 or 3 different hair pieces. So you
Poor little
have,
Solomon.
you start out with the 2 pieces together, and you can see the line indicating where those pieces were separated. And then let's move to the next photo. You can see all the putty. So this was all the yellow stuff is the putty that's intended to put the pieces together to make it so it becomes one solid piece. So you'll apply your putty, you'll sand it all down, and I don't know the next photo. Let's see.
Well, you had
Yep,
a
sand
third
it all
photo,
down, prime it.
but
Yep.
it was on the
Oh no,
side
this
view,
is
so I
fine.
figured this one just goes in order.
No, this is perfect. Yeah. So after priming, you can see that this has basically become one solid piece. And then it minimizes the number of pieces you have to paint. You don't have to do the priming or excuse me, the puttying and sanding down all over again. So it's easier to get it out of the way sometimes. I really don't like when I have to go back in after I've painted everything and do this step because it's just like I'm so close to being done. I don't want to do more prep
Nightmare.
work. Yeah. But it gives you a really nice professional effect. So it's from one person building kits to a newbie. This is something that will really set your kit apart if you want to take that extra step.
So
Yeah.
once you get it to this point, what do you do next?
Well,
Primer.
ideally, yeah, primer. Yeah, go ahead, Tosh, if you want to talk a little bit about primer, because I know you had a good
Yep.
article.
Primer is used to what's the word? Undercoat the pieces to allow the paint to stick better. Let me see. Sorry. It helps the paint to stick. It can bring out imperfections, as we were mentioning, if you use one that has a pigment in it, like a surfacer or whatever. Metal primer is currently constantly used by the Japanese painters, or it's a clear. Sorry, no, I'm getting my wires crossed.
Oh, you're good. Yeah,
Don't worry.
Yep. So primer helps the paint to stick. Can bring out the imperfections. Yeah. Sorry, man.
Oh no, it's good. Yeah, primer serves all of those purposes. So, if you're lucky, you will be able to prime your kit either with a spray can or an airbrush. There's different ways to do it, and you'll be done. A lot of times, what happens is we give these kits an initial pass with primer, like Tosh said, to notice imperfections, because a lot of times we end up missing bubbles or there's perhaps scratches from the resin. So it serves as a way to point out defects. Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Okay, sorry, my dog is barking. It gives you a chance to fill those imperfections and kind of essentially. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I have to step out for 1 second. My
Oh, no
daughter is
okay.
in
worries.
the other room.
Tosh, can you take in?
Yep. So, primer.
So we got
Sorry.
we did all the puttying, right?
Yeah.
And now we're getting to the next step, which is priming. How do we go about doing that, right? What
I'm
would be
back.
the way to go about it?
So I personally use an airbrush. I use. I don't know why I'm blanking so bad on this specific topic. I'm so sorry.
I am back if we want to discuss. That's fine.
Sorry, man.
No, you're good. Just remind me. Yeah, sorry I had to step out. For everyone who's not aware, I have a daughter and my dog is barking right outside her door. So I was like, this needs to happen. Okay, where were we?
Primer. Sorry.
Primer. Okay. So primer fills imperfections, essentially makes it so paint can stick to your kit. What we do is we give it multiple passes and essentially go back and forth between sanding and priming until everything is super smooth. And I see that there's a photo of an airbrush here. This is probably in context of airbrushing the primer on. So
Yeah.
airbrush or primer will come in either a spray can format where you just shake the can and you can spray it on, or it comes in almost like a liquid form. So what you'll need to do is take your thinner solvent of choice. Usually a lot of times it's lacquer thinner, and you'll mix the primer that came liquid in a bottle in a certain ratio that works best for your airbrush with the solvent, and then you can spray it with an airbrush. And we give it like a thin coat pass first to make sure, see all the imperfections. And then a lot of times after we fix everything, we just go back through and apply a little bit of a heavier coat.
So
And
yeah, I'm gonna jump back
go
real
ahead.
quick, just because there was a question in the chat about fixing broken parts.
Okay.
And I think this image will be very helpful because this was where you guys talked about reattaching parts and just cleaning things up. And maybe you could talk about a little bit more about like smaller pieces, like the bow in there that looks like it has some putty on it.
This one wasn't broken, luckily, but if that was broken, I'd first go in with the pins, the little pieces of wire, carefully drill out the shafts for the wire to go in and reattach it with a piece of wire first. This is a lot stronger than just a basic glue bond because it's got something in the center. Sorry, I'm umming again.
No, you're fine.
You got it.
Yeah, you got
that's
it.
basically how you do it.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, it's really about cleaning up the break, right? So if it's on a piece that's too small to pin, you're probably going to have to get away with maybe puttying and gluing it back together and then filling in the gaps and sanding it down to try to get it as close as possible. But if you can pin it, that'll make your life much easier.
Yeah, that will help align the pieces a little bit more, I would say. And this can happen, breakages can happen at any stage, but the process is basically the same as Tosh has described. And the good thing about these kits, as we've mentioned, I think in the past episode and throughout all of it, is that you can always repair and fix things. So I've even had cases where the kit has been fully finished and ready for a client. My cat knocked it over off a table, broke pieces, and I had to go in after and do the whole thing, sand down, reprime, yada yada yada. But all of this
happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
The other week back when I was finishing a Miku kit. The little chibi Miku, her pin wasn't quite straight. I was trying to adjust it and accidentally snapped the foot.
Oh boy.
That was a hassle.
It's like just one more thing, but
yeah, and another thing.
Yep. Yeah, you learn to be very patient quickly in this hobby. You're like, with enough experience, you just go, all right, this will add more time, but it's
Yeah,
doable. That's the
I
thing,
should
is
have
to not
breathed.
get overwhelmed, or yeah, just breathe, take a break. Almost everything could be fixed. So
So going back to the priming, you mentioned that you both use airbrushes. Maddie in the chat was asking, would you recommend for a complete beginner to kits to buy a kind of cheap, no-name airbrush to get started?
I don't actually know much on this topic, other than I know you can't buy replacement parts for them. So as a longevity thing, it won't be as good as buying a brand name airbrush.
I personally do not recommend it, solely for the fact that I've used no-name airbrushes and
Awesome.
midline airbrushes and some higher quality airbrushes, Iwata brand, etc. The $30, airbrush that I bought off Amazon, that's just a junky no-name, I intended for use with primer for this exact purpose, because airbrushes will come with different nozzle heads basically, and the smaller the number, kind of the finer amounts you can spray, it will spray more precise. So I bought this chunky brush, but I found I couldn't even remove the needle from the brush just because it was
Oh
so
no.
junky. Yeah, and so I would waste a lot of my time putting the primer in, not like no paint would come out when I would spray it, and I spent more time trying to fix the airbrush itself rather than by like to do anything. So, you know, if you're planning to get into this, I wouldn't be buying the $30 ones off of Amazon. I would be buying like the 60, 80, $100 ones, whether, it's Badger, Pash. There's some good,
Hardest Steam Deck's great.
yeah, there's
The
some other harder Steelback ones. I forget the one that you're thinking of, Science. Maybe you remember.
the Mr. Procom Boy, the
Yeah,
GSI
that one's.
Krios,
Mhm.
that one, it's about it ranges, right? So you can get it on a good deal around like 70, but on average
Yeah.
it's around 90. It's a fantastic beginner brush, and it will last you well into your kit painting career. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the same with the Hardest Steam Deck Evolution. That's the midline brush. They've got an Ultra. A friend of mine was using the Ultra quite far into her painting journey as well.
Yeah, my advice is to buy one that you'll like. That's a good starter one. Don't go for the junky crap. I have used my Iwata brush for over 10 years and it's still working beautifully. It just requires a little bit of maintenance. So, in terms of long-term cost value, that one has exceeded far beyond anything that a cheap Amazon brush would offer.
I've
But that's just my
also
personal experience.
the Hardest Steam Deck one also I found was a lot more forgiving if you manhandle it. It doesn't need any wrenches or anything to put it together. So that might be, if you can get the parts locally, that might be an option.
Yeah, every airbrush is built differently, and some come with like a needle guard, the needle being the little piece, that connects and helps spray the paint. So if you have one that doesn't have a guard, like you could just end up bending the needle, and that's a whole pain in the butt.
Mm.
So airbrushes are kind of a whole different topic, but still related to this. But it's all about finding a one that fits you and your painting style. And people get very passionate about their brushes as well because it's essentially
100,
an extension of your hand. So
100%.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
me as kind of still a newbie when it comes to all this, I did link the one that I purchased to start with, and I've used it a couple
Mm.
times, and it's fantastic. And it really is a kind of a little bit more of a mid-level brush than a super beginner brush, but it will last you such a long time. And it's
Mm.
really the one I would recommend to anybody really getting started because it gives you
Yeah.
the flexibility of, getting some of those finer details you might want, but still being able to do the larger spray areas and so forth like that and get the shadings and so forth and, proper coverage without being too hard to understand how to do it, would be the best way I could put it.
Yeah.
I will link the one that I use in chat, which I realize is not necessarily the cheapest. But again, this is one I've used for over a decade. And before Procom Boy became widely available, this was essentially the brush that everybody used that was recommended. at least on the Western sphere from my experience.
Yeah.
So Iwata Eclipse HPCS, and it's gravity feed, as are probably the other ones that we're discussing. In this photo, you can see this cup. That's what we refer to as gravity feed, meaning you can pour the paint into the cup and then it will just spray out. Other types are like ones that kind of attach at the bottom, and I don't have any experience with those, so I can't personally attest to how well they work.
No, neither. You can also paint with paintbrushes. You don't need an airbrush.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Let me think. Yeah. So here's a sampling of some of my favorite paintbrushes for painting details.
Before we go too deep into brushes, if someone wants to prime but doesn't have an airbrush,
Oh, yes.
well, rattle cans, is that an option?
Yeah, rattle cans. That's what I started with.
Yep, same here.
Yeah, I just found them really, really. The spray pattern is huge on them, so you do waste a little bit of paint when you're priming the smaller pieces. But
yeah, they
they're
can
great
be a
for
little
beginners.
testy. Yeah, spray cans depend on several things, including spray distance, the wind patterns outside. Humidity is a huge factor that can really affect how it ends up on your kit. There are several different types of rattle cans as well, right? You could buy the ones that are hobby brand, Tamiya, etc., that are primers, or you could just go straight to the automotive craft store and buy those too.
That's
Those
what I
are all
used.
primers that work.
I think mine was a Rust-Oleum.
Yep, Rust-Oleum is a very popular brand. I used to use that when I was first starting out with kits. And one thing you could do if you're using rattle cans is they sell little attachments that you can attach to it, and it will narrow the spray pattern of it a little bit. So that is what I used for a lot of the time that I was doing rattle cans, is I would use this little attachment, and that way you're not wasting, huge amounts of paint, because like Tosh said, the spray pattern of cans is pretty wide.
And do you have any tips on how to use a rattle can as far as it making sure it applies as smoothly as an airbrush would?
It's been a long time since I used a can, but what I used to do is I would shake it for at least 2 to 3 minutes. I think on a lot of these it just says to shake it for 1, but you want to make sure that everything's agitated. I would then spray 6 to 8 inches away, and I'd give it kind of like a misting first pass. So you kind of move the can back and forth over the piece just really lightly to kind of settle down some of the paint onto, or the primer onto it. And then I go in and do a little bit of a heavier coat. But you want to pay attention to the instructions because some of them say, once you apply this coat, wait 24 hours before a new one.
Yes.
There are different instructions with different things. And one thing I don't recommend is going really heavy-handed on it, because you could risk running. So too much primer on it would mean that the kit will get kind of gloppy, and the primer will just be too thick, and that can lead to problems during curing, and it can look kind of warped.
Can hide details as well.
Yes. Yeah, especially the smaller the kit, the easier it is to hide the details. Or the more detailed the kit with like small areas, you can end up filling those in really quickly. So for that reason, a lot of us eventually graduate into using an airbrush, just because you can get that precision.
Perfect. Thank you for covering that. Back to brushes.
So you can start with cheap brushes that you get from the craft store. I think Golden Tacklon was the type I start with. It's made of a synthetic brush tip, sort of like a plastic. They're cheap, easy to replace, so you don't want to start out with the very expensive brushes first, just because you're still learning all your brush care techniques and stuff.
Yeah, having a very fancy brush is not going to make you a very fancy painter.
No.
But while you make the mistakes, you could very, very easily ruin a Winsor Newton Klinsky Sable brush or something, and throw $35 in the trash because you dunked it in the paint and it got in the ferrule, and now you don't have a tip anymore. So you could definitely I definitely recommend starting with the cheaper, easier brushes until you learn your techniques and your cleaning.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying like bulk Walmart $1 brushes because you're gonna get the bristles falling off into your paint
Oh
if you're hand
yeah, it's sort of a
painting.
mid-range, right?
Yeah, I would start more in like the mid-range, even Michael's or craft store bulk, set. At least that's a little bit better than the truly low-end
Sure.
stuff. Yeah.
So
Um,
we shouldn't go to Home Depot and go to the paint section and buy the brushes there.
Get the
just
big
slap it
one.
on. Yep, the biggest one possible.
It
Just
depends
slap
on
it
what you're
on.
painting.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I use big ones
specifically
for terrain.
Okay. Okay. You win, Chris.
And the super cheap brushes have a purpose. Sometimes you're mixing colors. You don't want to beat your
Yeah.
bristles up on a decent brush. So everything's got a
Or
use.
yeah,
That's
or you can do
totally
like
fair.
dry brushing techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, one thing we didn't cover. Sorry to kind of go back a little bit.
Oh,
We talked about air brushes, but you got to plug those into something.
oh yeah, compressors. Let me find my note about that. I had a specific model written down just because I don't actually know what the point of the more expensive compressors is. The AS186 is a white label compressor that I personally use and have used for like 5 or so years now. It's available on Amazon, eBay, etc. And yeah, Mun, do you know why you'd buy a more fancy compressor?
Honestly, no. I've been using the same compressor that when I first started the hobby. So,
Yeah, so I'm of the mindset, spend a little more on the airbrush, but you don't need to get a name brand compressor.
Yeah.
yeah, that I can generally agree with. You do want something that has like a water trap in it, so
Oh,
it will
yes.
kind of capture
And a
moisture.
tank.
Yeah, a
Mhm.
tank, definitely. The tank allows it to turn on and off so it doesn't overheat, and a air dial so you can adjust the pressure. We've just gotten a question in the comments. What's the compressor for? It blows the air through the airbrush, basically. It provides a
Yeah, you're
source of
not going to
air.
be able to put the paint out unless you have something providing the energy to push air through the airbrush. So,
Like really strong lung capacity.
yeah,
Yeah.
just blow on it. It'll be fine. No. So, a lot of
There
airbrushes will
is
have.
kits out there like that,
It's true. Yeah.
made for kids, I think.
Yeah.
They do make
A lot of.
those.
When I did my first airbrush, it was a plastic handheld kit it was not a gravity feed. It pulled paint up from a bottle on the
Ooh,
bottom, and
siphon feed.
it had a hose that connected to like a disposable rattle can looking CO2 thing.
Oh, that's
So
crazy.
it was
Oh,
not an
man.
actual compressor you plugged into the wall. It was it was janky, but it worked.
There are even like
It's been a
mobile
while.
ones now.
This was like 2008 or something.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Damn. You can get portable ones as well, as Mun was just saying.
Hmm. Yeah, there are ones that are standalone, plug into the outlet, connect your airbrush, but then there are also portable compressors, and
Oh, that's
some are
cool.
like an all-in-one system now, where it's just like just an airbrush connected to a small little thing, and then you can use it. But I don't have experience with those personally.
No, neither.
I
Nice.
do
think
have one of
Science bought
those
one.
Hobby Mio ones. It's actually really
Yes.
nice, and it does come with a hose. So it's battery powered, right?
Oh,
Rechargeable.
sweet.
It's very low noise, and it puts out a constant pressure. So if you don't want to go the tank route and you're just starting out, it is a good option because they're very cheap. I think they're around like $30 to $40. So they're not bad at all.
Yeah. I'll also say my air compressor is actually not too loud compared to like the airbrush booth, which is what you can see in this photo. It's really quiet. Sort
Yeah,
of like a
noise
low
is
ticking noise.
definitely a concern, depending on the compressor airbrush setup that you have. And kind of just go back a tiny second for the pressure.
Yes.
Constant pressure, like one pressure airbrushes systems, those are okay, but a lot of the time what we do is we adjust pressure. So that's taken in pounds per square inch or PSI. And so most of the time, I think a lot of us work somewhere between like 15 to 30 PSI, depending on your system, what your needs are. I tend to hover around like 17, 18 psi a lot of times, but all of this is like kind of specific things that you'll need to work out depending on what system you have.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I go
agree.
around. Oh, I tend to sit around 15 to 10 actually. My fancy airbrush, the Micron, works really good at low pressures. So it all depends on your airbrush setup as well.
The other thing I want to comment about that too is if you do get one of those portable compressors, like the battery power ones that I was just talking about, they do come with attachments in line that you can adjust the pressure on. So
Oh,
the
sweet.
compressor itself puts out a constant pressure, but it does give you the flexibility of having that adjustment. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
my
as precise as a standalone compressor system, but it does exist. So for anybody
Nice.
looking at that,
if you zoom in on the airbrushes that are in this photo, you can see my airbrush hose has a little dial on it as well, or maybe you might be able to. It's like got a little bit underneath the airbrush.
I'm,
It's not really
I'm
visible. Oh well.
yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about.
Is that like the Hobby Mio one you were just talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of very similar to that. It's kind of
Yeah.
built directly into the hose that they give you.
Yeah.
So instead of being like the quick connect like you have there that you can just snap off and then, have the um, adjustment dial on that. Is it on the quick connect?
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of being on that, it's actually on the hose part of it, but it's the same principle.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
You got a vortex mixer.
Yeah, I love it. My wrist gets sore from shaking the paints, so
Yeah,
I've
that
got a
was.
little
I got
lab
one
mixer
too.
behind there.
Game changer. Anyway, sorry. I
So
just I
good.
saw that in the background and went, oh. Anyway, so yeah, so we covered priming, what it is, why you do it, and how to do it. So
Could
we got
I
our
step
kit
in just
primed.
for a second,
Please do.
Chris? Yeah. So one thing that I do want to point out is that if you are planning to do the spray can, anything airbrush related route, is that you need protection for your lungs.
Yes.
So what's absolutely essential is to have a fume mask that's designed for odors and for particulates at the same time. So an N95 mask, which is for particulate use, is not going to cut it here because it does not protect you from fumes and odor. So this mask here, that's exactly what this is designed for, and that's what a lot of us use, in addition to all of the other contraptions that are meant to dissipate odor, including airbrush booth, fans, keeping windows open, all of that. And this is essential. If you're going to be airbrushing, if you're going to be working with paint, you need to have protection for your lungs.
If you're using a rattle
Additionally,
can, be outside.
Yes, be
yes.
outside.
I don't care what protection you have and how much ventilation you have.
Yeah, don't spray
Don't do
in a
that
box or
inside.
anywhere inside. Yeah.
Yeah. You can additionally use the N95 for when you're sanding the resin. That's
Yes.
an important bit we forgot to mention earlier. The resin dust can get stuck in your lungs and build up over time.
Yeah, nobody wants to end up with silicosis, which is when all of that gets stuck in your lungs, and anything that gets into your lungs is not going to come out of your lungs. So proper equipment and personal protective equipment is essential. Yeah, we should definitely have mentioned that early on. So
Well, you didn't mention it early on, but you did cover it, so it's
We're here
all
now.
there. Yep.
yep.
But yeah,
You've made it this far.
taking care of yourself is extremely important. A lot of these like
Yes.
paint fumes and even the paint itself are technically toxic materials, and they're also flammable. So you got to be careful to keep things away from like an open flame or anything that could spark or something like that. Um, just be
That's also
safe.
why they can't be shipped, is because
Right.
they're considered flammable
Yes.
materials. So if you're trying to
Internationally,
buy, internationally paint
internationally and
overseas.
by air, you can't ship them by air. You
Yep.
can do ground shipping with them. Most
Yes.
carriers will ground ship any of these. So
Yeah, but in terms of bringing paint over from, other countries as an individual, that's essentially why there are limitations. Smuggling it over is a different bit, but I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's illegal.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
Cool.
Yeah. What do we got next on the list, Chris?
Let's talk about painting. We talked
Hooray!
about the spraying of primer, and then we started to talk about actual paint brushes, and then I interrupted with the compressor stuff. So that's where we're
Let's
at.
see.
So what's this thing on screen, Tosh? What is this?
So that's my airbrush booth. I use it to vent the fumes from my airbrush outside. Also wear a mask at the same time. But if you look in the background, there's like a hose that leads out to my window and helps dissipate the fumes. I paint inside a special room where I've got it all locked away from my pets and whatnot. And a little, what's it called? A door stopper type contraption under the door. It stops the fumes from getting out of the room. Basically, if you're airbrushing, you want it to be in its own room or outside.
And that goes into a question that was just asked in chat that I was going to ask next, which is a spray booth absolutely necessary? Or can you do it in like a garage or outside?
When I first started, I was just using a cardboard box to sort of paint, like have the paint somewhere to go that wasn't the wall, and was doing it in a garage. I was still wearing my mask, so I was protected from the fumes, but since I was outside, it wasn't as much of an issue with the spray paint.
Yeah, I think the key here is isolation. So if you're able to spray and have the fumes and odors dissipate, then it's okay to be spraying in your garage as long as you're able to leave the space. You don't want to be spraying in your bedroom and being stuck with all of the fumes and all of that.
Yeah.
And being sure to, if you're going to be spraying for 8 hours or whatever, then make sure you're taking adequate breaks. But I don't think there's a problem with that. A lot of people do garages and outside and garages and all of that.
So have a dedicated space and also have proper ventilation.
Yes.
That's good to know.
So yeah, the spray booth isn't essential if you're outside.
I guess
yeah, if you're not doing it in a garage, it's not really a garage kit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right? Mine's just a room kit.
Exactly. That's a
House
different
kit.
episode.
Oh, okay, bye.
And what about how do you guys get started on the painting side of things? What's the first step after priming and you've done your pinning and everything now? What do you do to get started on the painting side of things?
This one, it's such a big topic.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, this is
it absolutely
huge.
is. But think of it like if you're just starting out, what would be your first steps?
Base coating. After the primer, I'd try and make sure that the base coat was white. Helps the paint, the colors pop a lot more than over like a gray background. Starting with the base colors. So what is the main color of the piece that you're working on? Say a shoe, it's mostly black. It's got some little details on it. Spray it black first.
What Tosh said is correct. What I do prior to anything is spoons. I mix my colors. So what is happening here is several vials of paint that I've custom mixed, and they have color matching spoons. So I typically mix almost all of my colors. So in order to make the kit colors harmonious, I compare different colors of spoons. I'm able to adjust my paint mixtures depending on whatever I choose to do. And then I pre-mix my bottles. So, when it comes to that base coating step, I have a color ready to go. I'm able to just know what it's going to come out mainly like out of the bottle and be able to spray it directly onto the kit and not have issues. So this is highly subjective. Some people just go for it. Some people just only use colors straight out of the bottle. But I try to mix as much as possible so I don't have to remix colors, because even when you're writing down your paint formulations, the colors can slightly vary once you end up mixing it. So
yeah, once you get into the habit of mixing, it makes a huge difference to your finish. It makes it feel like more cohesive than straight out of the bottle.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of colors for the most part, if you're painting anime style kits, they're not going to come pre-mixed. So you're going to be needing to look at reference photos and kind of figuring out what's the best color to paint this, how can we shade it? So you can see in this photo, especially on the pink spoon on the left, you can tell the difference between the kind of center base color and then on the outer edges of the spoon is the shading color. So we can do both on spoons to compare colors and see how things work. And you're not really limited to the same palette either. Sometimes I've sprayed like yellow and then outer edges blue to get more of a green. So really, the beauty of airbrushing is you can layer colors on. That's the whole point of it. So you can get some
Yeah.
really interesting effects.
My favorite is purple under red.
Oh yes, yeah, purple and red is very popular, and a great option for kind of painting those deep, dark black, purple, violet shades. This is an example of shading on the tips of pieces of hair to give them a little bit more dimension. And you can see it's not really a yellow color, but it's more of like a salmony, peachy color. Yep.
All right. So we've painted the base coats. Let's go into shading.
I mean, yeah, shading is kind of again subjective. Some people shade under the base coat, some people shade over the base coat. Both can give you very different effects depending on what you choose to do, and it's more of a personal decision. But just know, especially if you're layering colors with an airbrush, you're going to be getting some different effects. If you are hand painting, that's a little bit different. In terms of shading, your options are generally more so using a pastel. And I don't
Yes.
know if we want to talk about that later. I guess just for the terms of this picture, for descriptive purposes, what we have here in the top left is a base coated shoe. So it's a very, kind of lightish brown. And then what I've done here is layer several layers of clear brown of different colors. Start, kind of going first on the top left, top right is the second one, bottom left is the second or the third photo, and then on the right is the finished piece. So the more you shade your kit, the deeper those shadings are going to be, the darker, and you can get some really, I don't know the right word for it. I guess
Nice
not,
effects.
yeah, some nice effects. A lot of the master sculptors do some pretty smart shading and some pretty, what's the word for it? Intense shading. So I would say a lot of them can do some really intense shading to get some really clear gradients of color. And you can end up with some really different looking kits that way. A lot of
Yeah,
people
a lot
use
of them
shading.
use. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was wrapping up.
A lot of them use color theory. So this is where fancy theories and stuff come in. You can use color theory for different shading types to make them look more vivid than using just a basic clear brown.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can layer different colors and work with reds and purples. And a lot of us don't just go like, oh, here's clear black or here's clear
Yes.
blue. Like we do multiple things to get really, kind of diverse colors. This is a photo of a finished set of eyes, but you can see, or finished, sorry, face. But you can see kind of the hair gradient is really unique and different for this kit just because that's what the
She's so
character
cute.
has. So yeah, this one's one of my personal favorites. I still like how she came out.
There is a
One question from the. Sorry, go ahead.
no. You're taking it over. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say we have a question in the chat. Going back to you mixing up your paints for a particular project or kit, what do you do with the leftover pre-mixed paint? They're saying that sometimes they'll get their paints ready and get them all mixed, and then they don't use all of it before it goes bad.
When I make big amounts, I'll tend to put them in leftover glass bottles from the paint. I do tend to use them in further mixes, so I try to record keep all of my mixing ratios and stuff. I like keeping them in little test tubes as well. That stops it from going as bad, as quick.
Yeah, I keep all of my mixes, at least for a little bit. When I'm dealing with clients and painting commissions, I do store my paint mixtures just in the case something happens, and for whatever reason they might need to send it back. I've never had that happen, thankfully, but that can happen. Um, for things like mixing skin tone, bottles of skin tone, I tend to keep those, and like Tosh said, I mix them together and create Frankenstein mixes, or I just mark them and use them until they're done. For things that I'm ready to purge and get rid of, which I do occasionally, I I pour them into a glass jar and let that air out. And that way, then once all of the solvent and everything dries out, then you can safely dispose of it. At least I hope you can. You don't want to be pouring paint down the drain, right? With
No.
solvent and all of that.
Right.
That's the last thing you want to do. So similar to how you kind of store oil after cooking or anything, you just kind of want to separate it from anything and let all of those solvents and things dry out, and then you can safely get rid of it.
Something I've been meaning to look into was you can get these spill kits used at the petrol stations,
Oh,
and it
interesting.
turns the paint into this, like, I don't know what kind of mixture it would be, like a dusty particle mix, which you can just throw in the bin. I've been meaning to
That's
test that out.
really smart. Yeah, I should look into doing that. That's a good
Because I get a
idea.
lot of leftover thinner when I'm cleaning my airbrush out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what type of paint do you use? Are you using like acrylic or enamel or oil or lacquer, inks? Like, there's a lot of options out there. What do you usually use on your kits?
Lacquer is a very common one, especially in the Japanese painting space. Man and I both use it. It's super toxic, but comes out with gorgeous colors.
Yeah, I think the key here is to talk about it in a way that's like a little bit simpler for beginners to
Yeah.
understand. So there are a lot of terms that we throw around in terms of like lacquer or enamel, etc. And what we're generally referring to here is both the pigment and kind of the actual paint itself, and then the solvent or the solution that the paint is held within. So if we're talking about lacquer paint, we're generally talking about a paint that is thinned with a lacquer solvent, but the paint itself, the particles are like an acrylic, like a binding
Yes.
acrylic. So a lot of paint is acrylic, but when we're saying like, oh, lacquer paint, oh, enamel paint, we're more so talking about the solution that's used to thin it. So acrylic can be water based, right? We can thin it like, Vallejo or other ones. It can
Yeah.
also be kind of like weird stuff like Tamiya, which is kind of a hybrid where you're able to thin it.
Alcohol-y.
Yeah, alcoholic based. And then there's enamel paint, which is like those pigments but thinned in enamel thinner. And then lacquer paint, which is, those pigments and then thinned with lacquer. That was one thing that always tripped me up, and it trips up a lot of beginners, is how do we talk about this in a way that makes sense. So for most beginners, a lot of people want to start with lacquer. That's fine. Just be aware that you need to have all the proper safety equipment. And then, for the most part, if you're hand painting, all of that, you can, use water-based paint.
Yeah, for
Yep.
the absolute beginner, I think acrylics are generally the safer way to go, and it gives you a
Yes.
good way to, try both ways. Um, you could either do it hand painting or you could do it via airbrush. Both ways work with acrylics, and you're not exposing yourself to any of those toxic substances until you get a little more experienced with it.
Plus,
I've
you
s-
can't hand paint with lacquers very easily
Right.
either. So you need an airbrush.
Yeah, some
I've seen
paints
some
are
people
best
use
suited.
markers. What's the deal with those?
I haven't actually had an experience beyond just using them for joining pieces together.
Yeah, I personally have not used Gundam markers or any of those types, so I can't speak on that.
Well, never mind.
Yeah, sorry.
They are good for model kits, Chris. I'll give you that. Panel liners and so forth. They're good for getting into those grooves that a lot of model kits have, right, in the plastic molds
I'm
and so
seeing
forth.
them becoming more and more common. I'm seeing more brands other than just like the Gundam markers starting to exist.
Yep.
So because I just think for ease of use, it is a more natural feeling thing in someone's hand that has just never painted anything before, but they've held a pen before, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
seeing that as like a new kind of intro painting tool. But I don't have much experience with them either. But I'm seeing more of it, and I think it's cool. Like more options to get people into the hobby,
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
easing them into it. I think it is really a really positive thing to see. So
Yeah, and
um,
the Gundam markers have a big range from what I remember.
yeah,
I've even seen some people do what's called decanting, which is where you basically remove all of the paint out of a spray can so you can airbrush it. And I've seen
Oh,
people do
yeah.
that with the liquid from Gundam markers as well. So they're able to
Interesting.
paint it a little bit more finely with their own paintbrush. Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have no idea the logistics behind it or how to like physically remove it from the marker, but just something to note.
Well, as we're coming up on pretty much 90 minutes at this point, I think after talking paint there, that was a good place to kind of wrap it up for today. And then next time, what we can do is do a deep dive into, getting started actually painting your first kit, whether it be brush painting or, airbrushing, or how to go into different techniques and things like that for a beginner. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah, we can touch a little bit more on the paint types and different things
Yes.
then in more detail, I think.
I've got a guide I'm working on about paint types, so I'll try and finish that before then as well.
Woo! Yep, always good.
Oh, that's awesome. Chris, how do you feel about that?
No, I think it's great. I've got more paint technique questions, so we'll definitely do a deep dig into that next time. I think that'd be awesome.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys again. I mean, this is
Thanks.
fantastic, and I'm glad that we're
This is
getting this
fun.
information out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope everybody really, thanks to the audience too for coming in here and asking all these questions, because, these are a lot of things that we as the hosts definitely don't think of at the time that we're trying to put these together. So the more you ask, the better it is for us. And I think everybody else as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks to our amazing guests for teaching us all this stuff. We've bugged you for two episodes, and looks like
Now we've got
we're
a
gonna
third.
we're gonna get another one out of you. So
Oh
Good.
no.
Yeah, hopefully we've covered a lot of the basics. There's plenty of guides online as well if you're interested in more resources. So
absolutely. So yeah, next time we're gonna do some painting and then learn how to assemble and wrap up our kits.
sounds good.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much, everyone. We will
Thank
see you
you.
next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.